What if I told you that the perfect life you see on social media could be the most dangerous prison ever built? Madison Brooks had it all. A billionaire husband, a Malibu mansion, millions of followers watching her fairy tale pregnancy. But when she found another woman's earring in her bed, she discovered something that would shatter everything she believed about love, trust, and reality itself. This isn't just a story about betrayal. This is about a woman who was being systematically poisoned by the man who promised to love her forever. A woman whose perfect husband was planning to steal not just her fortune, not just her sanity, but her unborn child. Madison thought she was losing her mind. She had no idea she was fighting for her life. What you're about to hear is the true account of how a small-town teacher became the target of an international trafficking ring, how she discovered that her husband's business empire was built on human suffering, and how one phone call to 911 would expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of power. But here's what will shock you most. Madison's story isn't unique. Right now, there could be someone in your life living this nightmare, hiding behind designer clothes and perfect Instagram posts. By the end of this story, you'll never look at a perfect couple the same way again. The golden hour light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows of the Malibu mansion as Madison Brooks adjusted her ring light for the third time. 6 months pregnant and glowing, she smoothed her designer maternity dress and smiled at the camera mounted on her marble kitchen island. "Good morning, my beautiful souls," she said, her voice warm and practiced. "Welcome back to Living the Dream with Madison. Today marks our 6-month milestone, and I cannot wait to share this incredible journey with you." The live chat exploded with heart emojis and congratulations. Madison had built her following from 0 to 2 million in just 18 months, documenting her fairy tale marriage to tech billionaire Ryan Castellano. Her audience loved the behind-the-scenes glimpse into wealth and romance. "You asked how I knew I had made it," Madison said, reading a comment aloud. She paused, her hand resting on her rounded belly. "When you stopped checking the exits." The comment section went wild. Screenshots flooded social media within minutes. Ryan appeared in the kitchen doorway, all 6 feet of him commanding attention in his tailored navy suit. Dark hair perfectly styled, jaw sharp enough to cut glass, he moved with the confidence of a man who owned everything he touched. "There's my gorgeous wife," he said, crossing to kiss her temple for the camera. His hand covered hers on her belly. "And our little miracle." The chat erupted. Couple goals. So perfect. "When will Ryan propose again?" Madison laughed, leaning into him. "We're already married, loves. 3 years next month." "Best decision I ever made," Ryan murmured, his lips brushing her ear. To the camera, he added, "Sorry to interrupt everyone. Big day at the office. Taking care of our family." He kissed her forehead and was gone, leaving behind the scent of expensive cologne and the echo of his Italian leather shoes on marble. Madison continued streaming for another 20 minutes, showing off the nursery they were designing, the custom furniture arriving next week, the tiny clothes she could not stop buying. Her audience hung on every word, living vicariously through her blessed life. "That's all for today, loves. Thank you for being part of our journey. Same time tomorrow?" She ended the stream and immediately felt the mask slip from her face. The silence in the massive house pressed against her like a weight. 20,000 square feet, and she felt utterly alone. Her phone buzzed with notifications. Brands wanting partnerships, interview requests, fan mail. But underneath the praise, she noticed the growing number of comments that made her stomach clench. "Something about her seems off lately. Is it just me, or does she look scared sometimes? That husband gives me weird vibes." Madison deleted those comments quickly, as she always did. Her life was perfect. Everyone said so. She walked to the master bedroom, her bare feet silent on the heated floors. The bed was unmade from their restless night. Ryan sighed cold since dawn. As she bent to straighten the silk sheets, something caught the light. A small diamond earring nestled against Ryan's pillow. Not hers. She never wore diamonds during pregnancy, too worried about the baby. Madison picked up the earring with trembling fingers. It was expensive, delicate, the kind of thing a young woman might wear to feel sophisticated. Her breath came in short gasps. She thought of Ryan's assistant, Amber, 24, blonde, always finding excuses to touch his arm during meetings. The sound of Ryan's car returning made her stuff the earring into her jewelry box. She was being paranoid. Pregnancy hormones. He worked with dozens of women. It could belong to anyone. But as she heard his footsteps on the stairs, Madison found herself checking the bedroom door, noting how far it was to the hallway. Old habits from childhood, her therapist had said. Growing up with an alcoholic father had made her hyper-aware of exits. She thought she had outgrown that. The door opened and Ryan appeared, loosening his tie. "How was the stream, babe?" "Good. Great engagement." She kept her voice steady. "Long day?" "Endless meetings. You know how it is." He moved to his walk-in closet, not meeting her eyes. "I need to shower and head back out. Dinner with investors." Another dinner. Another night alone. Madison wanted to ask about the earring, wanted to demand answers. But something in his posture, the sharp edge in his voice, made her swallow the words. Instead, she said, "Of course, I understand." As the shower started running, Madison caught her reflection in the mirror. Still glowing, still perfect, still smiling, still checking the exits. Madison sat in the marble bathroom, staring at the pregnancy test she did not need. 6 months along, her doctor had confirmed everything was progressing normally just last week. But the cramping had started 3 days ago, subtle but persistent. Ryan's voice carried from his office down the hall, sharp and agitated. "I don't care what the projections say. Make it happen, or I'll find someone who will." She pressed her hand to her belly, feeling the baby's reassuring movement. The cramping was probably normal. Stress, maybe. The kind of stress that came from finding another woman's jewelry in your bed and being too afraid to mention it. Her phone buzzed. A direct message on Instagram from someone with a private account. "You don't know me, but I think you should know your husband has been meeting with my friend Amber Cruz every Tuesday and Thursday at the Chateau Marmont. Room 1215. Always room 1215. Madison's blood turned to ice. Amber Cruz, Ryan's assistant. She screenshot the message before it could disappear, her hands shaking. The anonymous account had already vanished. "Babe?" Ryan's voice suddenly closer. Madison shoved her phone under a towel and flushed the toilet for cover. "Just a minute." When she emerged, Ryan was leaning against the doorframe, studying her with those sharp blue eyes that had once made her feel like the only woman in the world. "You okay? You look pale." "Just tired." She moved past him toward the bedroom. "Maybe I should call Dr. Martinez about the cramping." "Cramping?" Ryan's voice shifted, became softer. "Why didn't you tell me? Here, sit down." He guided her to the bed with gentle hands, the same hands that had held her through morning sickness, that rubbed her feet when they swelled. This was the Ryan she had fallen in love with. Attentive, caring, protective. "It's probably nothing," she said, allowing herself to lean into his touch. "We should call the doctor now." He reached for his phone. "I'll cancel tonight." "No," Madison said quickly. "Don't cancel. It's really mild. I'll call in the morning if it continues." Ryan studied her face. "You sure?" She nodded, forcing a smile. "Go to your dinner. I'll take a bath and get some rest." He kissed her forehead, lingering. "I love you, Mads. You and our baby mean everything to me." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they felt like a script. After Ryan left, Madison waited 30 minutes before opening her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed, "Chateau Marmont guest records." Nothing public, of course. The exclusive hotel prided itself on discretion. She tried a different approach. Amber Cruz Instagram. The account was public, full of perfectly curated photos. Amber at trendy restaurants, designer clothes, expensive jewelry, including the diamond earrings Madison had found. Posted 2 days ago with the caption, "Best boss ever. Thanks for the early birthday gift." Madison's vision blurred. The proof was right there, flaunted for the world to see, except for the wife who was apparently too trusting to notice. She scrolled through months of posts. Amber at company events, always positioned near Ryan. Amber at restaurants Madison recognized as Ryan's favorites. Amber wearing clothes that cost more than most people's rent. The cramping intensified. Madison closed the laptop and walked to the kitchen, needing water, needing air, needing to think. The house felt different now, like a beautiful trap. Every luxury surface mocked her. The smart home system Ryan had installed suddenly felt like surveillance. She opened the massive refrigerator, looking for the prenatal vitamins Dr. Martinez had prescribed. The bottle sat on the top shelf, exactly where she left it every morning. As she shook out a pill, something struck her as odd. The pills looked different, smaller, a slightly different shade of white. Madison held one up to the light. The imprint was wrong. These weren't her prenatal vitamins. Her hands began to shake violently. She grabbed her phone and called Dr. Martinez's after-hours line. "This is Madison Castellano. I need to speak with Dr. Martinez immediately. I think someone has been tampering with my medication." The nurse put her on hold. Madison stood in her gleaming kitchen, surrounded by $30 million of real estate, and realized she might not be safe in her own home. When Dr. Martinez came on the line, her voice was calm but serious. "Madison, where are you now?" "At home. My husband is out." "Can you bring the pills to the emergency room? Tonight? You think something's wrong?" "I think we need to test them immediately. Can someone drive you?" Madison looked around the empty house. No family nearby. Her friends were Ryan's friends now. She had isolated herself so completely in this golden cage. "I'll drive myself." "No, you're pregnant and potentially compromised. Call someone or I'll send an ambulance." Madison's mind raced. There was only one person she could think of who might help, who might believe her. She scrolled through her contacts and found the number from 6 months ago, when she had reported a strange man following her through a parking garage. The police had dismissed it as paranoia, but one detective had given her his card. Detective James Wright. "This is Detective Wright. This is Madison Castellano. You probably don't remember me, but I called about someone following me last year. I think I need help." "I remember. What's happening?" "I think my husband has been drugging me." Silence, then, "Where are you now?" "Home, he's out." "Text me your address. Don't eat or drink anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As Madison waited, she walked through the house that had been her dream home, seeing it now as it really was. Not a sanctuary, but a prison with floor-to-ceiling windows that let everyone see in, but never let her see out. The exit suddenly seemed very far away. Detective James Wright stood in Madison's pristine living room, his weathered face grim as he sealed the pill bottle in an evidence bag. 40 years old with steel gray eyes and the kind of patient demeanor that came from 20 years of listening to victims, he had seen enough domestic situations to recognize the signs. "The lab will have preliminary results by morning," he said, settling into the white leather chair across from where Madison sat curled on the sofa. "Tell me about your husband's behavior recently. Any changes?" Madison wrapped her arms around her belly, feeling the baby's restless movements. "He's been distant, working late more often, but Ryan's always been driven, focused on business." "The earring you found, you said it belonged to his assistant?" "Amber Cruz. I saw her wearing identical ones on her Instagram account." Madison pulled up the photos on her phone. "Posted 2 days ago." Wright studied the images, his expression unreadable. "How long has she worked for him?" "About 8 months, since she graduated from UCLA." Madison hesitated. "She's young, beautiful, the kind of woman Ryan used to date before me. Before he met the small-town teacher who made him want to settle down?" The words stung because they were true. Madison had been teaching second grade in Oregon when she met Ryan at a charity event. He had swept her off her feet with private jets and poetry, convincing her to move to Los Angeles, to marry him, to build a life in his world. "That's exactly what he said," she whispered. Wright made notes in a small leather notebook. "Madison, I need to ask about your medical history. Any previous pregnancies?" "No, this is our first." Her hand moved protectively over her belly. "We tried for 2 years. This baby is everything to us." "Any complications? Concerns from your doctor?" Madison thought about the cramping, the fatigue that seemed disproportionate to pregnancy. "I've been more tired than expected, some cramping, but Dr. Martinez said everything looked normal at my last appointment." "When was that?" "Last week. The baby's heartbeat was strong, measurements perfect." Wright's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. "Madison, I need to make a call. Is there somewhere private I can step out?" She pointed toward Ryan's office. "Down the hall. Second door." While Wright was gone, Madison found herself studying the living room with new eyes. The security cameras Ryan had installed for their protection were positioned to cover every angle. The smart home system could track her movements, her conversations, even her sleep patterns. How long had she been living under surveillance without realizing it? Wright returned, his expression darker. The preliminary test results are in. Those aren't prenatal vitamins, Madison. They're anxiety medication. Specifically, a combination of benzodiazepines and mild sedatives. The room tilted. Madison gripped the sofa arm to steady herself. For how long? We'll need more detailed analysis, but based on the degradation pattern, possibly months. The baby! The words came out as a gasp. Is the baby okay? We need to get you to the hospital now. Dr. Martinez is waiting. As they drove through the winding Malibu roads, Madison's phone rang. Ryan's face filled the screen, handsome and concerned. She looked at Wright, who nodded. Hey, babe, she answered, fighting to keep her voice normal. How are you feeling? I've been thinking about the cramping all through dinner. The concern in his voice sounded so genuine. For a moment, Madison doubted everything. This was the man who held her hair back during morning sickness, who talked to her belly every night, who had cried when they heard their baby's heartbeat for the first time. I'm actually heading to the hospital, she said. The cramping got worse. What? I'm coming now. Which hospital? Cedars-Sinai. But don't leave your meeting. I'm sure it's nothing. Are you crazy? I'm leaving now. The line went dead. Wright glanced at her in the rearview mirror. How did he sound? Worried, like a concerned husband should sound. Madison pressed her palm against the window. What if I'm wrong about this? What if there's an explanation? There might be. That's what we're going to find out. At the hospital, Dr. Martinez met them at the emergency entrance. A calm, efficient woman in her 50s, she had delivered thousands of babies and seen every complication imaginable. Let's get you both monitored, she said, leading Madison to a private room. The blood work will tell us what we're dealing with. As Madison changed into a hospital gown, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. Still glowing, still beautiful, but now she could see what her audience had noticed in the comments. The slight tightness around her eyes, the way she held her shoulders as if bracing for impact. The fetal monitor showed a strong, steady heartbeat. Madison closed her eyes, relief flooding through her. Baby looks good, Dr. Martinez said, adjusting the sensors. Heart rate is perfect. Movement is normal. But the drugs? We'll know more when the blood work comes back. Some medications can affect development. Others have minimal impact. Try not to panic until we have facts. A commotion in the hallway announced Ryan's arrival. Madison heard his voice, commanding and urgent, demanding to speak with the doctor immediately. Should I let him in? Dr. Martinez asked. Madison's hand moved to her belly. The baby kicked, as if responding to her stress. She thought about the earring, the fake vitamins, the months of feeling like she was losing her mind. Not yet, she said. I need to know what we're dealing with first. Wright stepped closer to the bed. Madison, there's something else. I ran a background check on Amber Cruz while we were driving here. Madison looked up at him, dreading what came next. She doesn't exist. I mean, she's real, but her background is fabricated. No employment history before 8 months ago. No college records at UCLA. No family connections. The fetal monitor began beeping faster as Madison's heart rate spiked. What does that mean? It means your husband's assistant is not who she claims to be, and someone went to a lot of trouble to place her in his life. Outside the room, Ryan's voice grew louder. That's my wife in there. I have a right to see her. Dr. Martinez looked between Madison and Wright. I can only hold him off so long. Hospital policy requires spousal access unless there's a restraining order. Madison closed her eyes, feeling the walls closing in. 8 months ago, around the time Amber was hired, Ryan had suggested Madison cut back on her teaching to focus on getting pregnant. He had encouraged her to start the lifestyle blog to document their perfect life. 8 months ago, her world had begun to shrink until it was just her, Ryan, and the cameras that recorded their every moment. Let him in, she said finally, but Detective Wright stays. The door opened and Ryan burst through, still in his dinner suit, hair slightly mussed from running. His eyes went immediately to the fetal monitor, then to Madison's face. Thank God you're both okay, he said, moving to take her hand. I was terrified something had happened. His touch was warm, familiar, comforting. Madison found herself leaning into it despite everything. Who's this? Ryan asked, noticing Wright for the first time. Detective Wright. He gave me a ride when I felt too shaky to drive. Ryan's smile was grateful. Thank you for taking care of my wife. I can take it from here. But Wright didn't move. Actually, Mr. Castellano, I'd like to ask you a few questions about your wife's medication. Ryan's expression shifted subtly, the warmth cooling by degrees. What kind of questions? The prenatal vitamins in your home aren't prenatal vitamins. They're anxiety medication. Any idea how that might have happened? For just a moment, so brief Madison almost missed it, something flickered across Ryan's face. Not surprise, recognition. Then his mask slipped back into place, perfect concern replacing whatever she had glimpsed. That's impossible, he said. I picked them up from the pharmacy myself last week. But Madison was watching his hands now, the way his fingers drummed against his thigh, a tell she had noticed during their marriage when he was lying about small things. Working late, missing calls, forgotten anniversaries. The same tell that had been there every time he claimed to love her. Dr. Martinez returned with blood work results that made the room fall silent. Madison's system showed traces of 3 different medications, none of them prenatal vitamins. Benzodiazepines, mild opiates, and something Dr. Martinez had to look up in her pharmaceutical database. Risperidone, she said finally. It's an antipsychotic, typically used for bipolar disorder or schizophrenia. Madison felt the world tilt. I don't have either of those conditions. No, you don't. But prolonged exposure to this combination of drugs could cause symptoms that might look like psychological instability, confusion, memory issues, mood swings, paranoia. Ryan stood up abruptly. This is insane. Madison, you know I would never hurt you or our baby. His voice carried the perfect note of wounded betrayal, but Madison was watching Detective Wright's face. The detective's expression had gone completely flat, the look of a man who had heard this exact defense too many times. Mr. Castellano, Wright said, where do you keep your wife's medications? The kitchen. Same place for months. Madison, tell him. Madison nodded slowly. Top shelf of the refrigerator. But Ryan, you said you picked them up last week. I never asked you to do that. You were tired. I was at the pharmacy anyway for my blood pressure medication. You don't take blood pressure medication. The silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. Ryan's jaw worked as he processed being caught in the lie. I mean my vitamins. I misspoke. Dr. Martinez cleared her throat. Mr. Castellano, given the circumstances, I'm going to recommend that Madison stay overnight for observation. We need to monitor both her and the baby while these substances clear her system. Absolutely, Ryan said. Whatever you think is best. But when he reached for Madison's hand, she pulled away. Ryan, I need you to go home. His eyes flashed. What? I need space to think, to understand what's happening. Madison, you're not thinking clearly. It's the drugs talking. Wright stepped forward. I think your wife has been very clear, Mr. Castellano. Sakun. Ryan's attention shifted to the detective, and for the first time, Madison saw something dangerous in her husband's eyes. Are you a doctor? Are you family? What exactly gives you the right to interfere in my marriage? The law gives me that right when we're dealing with potential poisoning of a pregnant woman. Poisoning? Ryan laughed, but it sounded wrong. You think I poisoned my own wife? The woman carrying my child? This is ridiculous. He turned back to Madison, his voice softening into the tone that had once made her feel cherished. Mads, baby, think about this. We're talking about our marriage, our family, some mix-up at a pharmacy, and suddenly I'm a criminal? Madison wanted to believe him. Everything in her that had loved him for 3 years wanted to take his hand and apologize for doubting him, but the baby kicked hard against her ribs, as if protesting. The earring, she said quietly. Ryan blinked. What? I found Amber's earring in our bed. His face went completely blank. Not surprised, not confused. Blank. I don't know what you're talking about. Diamond studs. She posted them on Instagram, thanking her boss for the birthday gift. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice had changed, become flat and careful. Madison, you're clearly having some kind of breakdown. The drugs, the stress of pregnancy, you're seeing things that aren't there. Wright's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his eyebrows rose slightly. Mr. Castellano, I'm going to need you to come with me to answer some questions. I'm not leaving my wife. Actually, you are. Wright's voice carried new authority. We just received security footage from the Chateau Marmont. You're going to want to see it. Madison watched Ryan's face cycle through expressions like a slot machine. Confusion, anger, calculation, and finally something that made her blood run cold. Contempt. Madison, he said, his voice now completely devoid of warmth, you have no idea what you're doing. Sir, we need to go now, Wright said, his hand moving to his belt. Ryan leaned down until his face was inches from Madison's. You think you're going to destroy everything we built together? You think anyone will believe you? Dr. Martinez moved between them. Mr. Castellano, you need to leave immediately or I'll call security. Ryan straightened, his smile returning, but wrong somehow, like a mask worn by something that didn't understand human expressions. I'll be back tomorrow, sweetheart. We'll get through this together. After he left with Wright, the room felt like a vacuum. Madison lay in the hospital bed, machines beeping around her, feeling more alone than she had ever felt in her life. Dr. Martinez sat beside her. Madison, I've been practicing obstetrics for 25 years. What I'm about to tell you isn't medical advice, it's human advice. Madison looked at her, this woman who had seen her through 6 months of pregnancy, who had shared her excitement about becoming a mother. Trust your instincts. You came here tonight because something felt wrong. Don't let anyone convince you that feeling is invalid. Madison's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Room 1215, tonight. Come alone. There are things you need to see. A friend who's been watching. Her hands shook as she showed Dr. Martinez the message. Don't even think about it, Dr. Martinez said immediately. But Madison was already thinking. Room 1215, the same room number the anonymous messenger had mentioned. The room where Ryan met Amber. What if it's proof? What if someone has evidence of what's been happening to me? Then they can bring it to the police. Madison looked out the hospital window at the city lights below. Somewhere out there, Ryan was being questioned about security footage. Somewhere out there, Amber was living under a false identity. And somewhere in this web of lies was the truth about what had been done to her and her baby. Dr. Martinez, hypothetically, if I were to leave against medical advice, would it hurt the baby? Madison, no. Hypothetically, Dr. Martinez sighed. The baby appears stable. The medications are clearing your system, but you could be walking into danger. Madison thought about the past 8 months, the increasing isolation, the gradual erosion of her confidence, the feeling that she was losing her mind. She had been in danger this entire time. The difference was now she knew it. I need to understand what's happening to me. She reached for her clothes, ignoring Dr. Martinez's protests. As she dressed, her phone rang. Detective Wright. Madison, we have a problem. The security footage shows your husband entering the hotel, but it's corrupted. All we have is him going in, nothing else. What does that mean? It means someone with significant technical resources made sure we couldn't see what happened in that room. Madison finished zipping up her dress. Detective Wright, what if I told you I had a way to find out what really happened in room 1215? I'd tell you to stay exactly where you are and let law enforcement handle it. And if I told you I was going anyway? A long pause. Then I'd tell you to keep your phone on and be very, very careful. Madison looked at herself in the hospital bathroom mirror one last time. The woman looking back at her was pregnant, vulnerable, and scared. But she was also tired of being a victim. Dr. Martinez, if something happens to me, make sure my baby is safe. Madison, please don't do this. But Madison was already walking out of the room, toward whatever truth waited for her in the darkness of room 1215. Behind her, she could hear Dr. Martinez on the phone with Wright, reporting that their witness was about to become bait. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first honest moment she had experienced in months. The Chateau Marmont at midnight felt like a different world from the daytime playground of celebrities and influencers. Madison sat in her car outside the iconic hotel, hands gripping the steering wheel as she studied the Gothic architecture that had harbored secrets for decades. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from Ryan and 3 voicemails she couldn't bring herself to play. Detective Wright had texted twice, reminding her to keep her location services on, and her finger near the emergency call button. The baby kicked restlessly, responding to Madison's elevated heart rate. She pressed her hand to her belly, whispering, "We're going to find out the truth, little one, no matter what it costs." On. The hotel lobby was dimly lit, all velvet shadows and whispered conversations. Madison approached the front desk, where a young man with carefully styled hair looked up from his computer. "I'm here to see someone in room 1215, she said. "Name?" Madison hesitated. "I'm not sure. They're expecting me." The desk clerk's expression didn't change, but he picked up a phone and dialed. After a brief, quiet conversation, he hung up. "12th floor. Elevator bank is to your right." The elevator ride felt eternal. Madison watched the numbers climb, each floor taking her further from safety and deeper into whatever web had been spun around her life. At the 12th floor, she stepped into a hallway lined with doors that had witnessed decades of Hollywood scandals. Room 1215 was at the end of the hall. Madison raised her hand to knock, but the door opened before she could touch it. Amber Cruz stood in the doorway, but she looked nothing like the polished assistant Madison had seen in Ryan's office. Her blonde hair was pulled back severely, her makeup minimal, and her designer clothes replaced by simple black jeans and a sweater. "Thank you for coming," Amber said, her voice different too. Lower, more serious. "We need to talk." Madison followed her into the suite, noting the cameras set up around the room, the laptops open on the desk, the surveillance equipment that belonged in a spy movie, not a hotel room. "Who are you?" Madison asked. Amber closed the door and engaged multiple locks. "FBI Special Agent Amanda Cruz. I've been undercover for 8 months, investigating your husband's business operations." The room spun. Madison sat down hard on the sofa, her mind struggling to process this information. "FBI? Investigating Ryan for what?" "Human trafficking, money laundering, corporate espionage. Your husband's technology company is a front for moving people and money across international borders." Amanda moved to one of the laptops, pulling up files that made Madison's stomach clench. Financial records, shipping manifests, communications that painted a picture of an empire built on suffering. "We've been building a case for 2 years, but Ryan is careful. Too careful. We needed someone inside his personal life." "So you became his mistress." Amanda's expression darkened. "I became whatever I needed to become to gather evidence. But Madison, what we found goes deeper than business crimes." She opened another file, this one full of medical records, prescription databases, and surveillance footage from their Malibu home. "Ryan's been systematically drugging you for months, not just to control you, but to create a medical record of psychological instability." Madison's breath came in short gasps. "Why?" "Because you're inconvenient. Your lifestyle blog was supposed to be a cover for his operations, a way to legitimize his wealth and public image. But you started asking questions about his late nights, his business trips, the money that didn't add up." Amanda pulled up Madison's own Instagram posts from 8 months ago. In them, Madison looked different, more confident, more questioning. Comments on Ryan's posts asking where he was traveling, why certain meetings were so secretive. "You were getting too close to the truth, so we started the medication regimen. Small doses at first, just enough to make you tired, compliant. When that wasn't enough, he increased the dosage." The baby, Madison's hand moved protectively to her belly, "was never in danger from the medications. Ryan's too smart for that. The drugs he gave you are actually safe during pregnancy, but the combination would cause symptoms that would justify having you committed." Madison felt sick. "Committed?" Amanda opened another file, this one containing legal documents with Ryan's signature. "Involuntary psychiatric hold. He's been building a case that you're having a psychotic break. The fake vitamins, the surveillance footage of you talking to yourself, the social media posts he made you delete because they sounded paranoid." On the screen, Madison saw her own medical records, but altered. Notes about erratic behavior, mood swings, paranoid ideation. A complete fabrication built over months of careful manipulation. Once you were committed, he would have legal control over your assets, your social media accounts, and most importantly, your baby. He wants the baby. He needs the baby. A child gives him the perfect cover for his lifestyle, the devoted single father whose wife tragically suffered a mental breakdown. Plus, children are incredibly valuable in his line of work. Madison's vision blurred. The room felt like it was closing in. You're saying my husband planned to steal my child and sell them? I'm saying your husband is a sociopath who views everyone in his life as assets to be leveraged, including you, including your baby. Amanda's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her expression hardened. We have a problem. Ryan left police custody 20 minutes ago. His lawyers got him released pending further investigation. Madison stood up shakily. He'll come looking for me. Not just looking. He knows you're here. The tracking app on your phone has been sending your location to his server all night. Madison fumbled for her phone, staring at the innocent-looking device that had been betraying her for months. How did you know I would come here? Because I sent you the messages. We needed you to see the truth, but we also needed Ryan to believe you were acting erratically. Coming to a hotel in the middle of the night to meet a stranger fits the narrative he's been building. Madison felt the walls closing in from every direction. So I'm bait. You're the key to taking down an organization that's destroyed hundreds of lives. But Madison, there's something else you need to know. Amanda pulled up one final file, this one containing birth certificates, DNA tests, and photographs that made Madison's blood run cold. You're not Ryan's first wife. The photographs showed 3 other women, all beautiful, all pregnant, all married to Ryan Castellano at different times over the past 10 years. Where are they now? Amanda's silence was answer enough. Madison's legs gave out and she collapsed back onto the sofa. Everything she thought she knew about her life, her marriage, her future, crumbled around her. How long do we have? She whispered. Based on his location, maybe 15 minutes before he gets here. Madison looked around the room at the evidence of her husband's crimes, at the surveillance equipment that could finally expose the truth. She thought about the baby moving inside her, innocent and unaware of the danger surrounding them both. What do you need me to do? Amanda's smile was grim but determined. Help me make sure he never hurts anyone else again. Outside, the sound of expensive car engines filled the night air. Ryan was coming, and he wasn't coming alone. The final confrontation was about to begin. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made both women freeze. Madison pressed herself against the window while Amanda checked the surveillance monitors she had set up. 3 men, Amanda whispered. Ryan plus 2 I don't recognize. Probably private security. Madison's heart hammered as she watched Amanda move with practiced efficiency, activating recording equipment and checking the weapon holstered beneath her sweater. Madison, listen carefully. Everything that's about to happen is being recorded and transmitted to my team. No matter what Ryan says or does, don't believe him. He's going to try to convince you that I'm the threat. A knock at the door, polite but insistent. Mads, I know you're in there, sweetheart. Please open the door. Ryan's voice carried through the wood, warm and concerned. The voice that had whispered promises in the dark, that had convinced her to build a life with him. Amanda positioned herself behind the door, gun drawn but concealed. She nodded to Madison. Madison opened the door to find Ryan standing in the hallway, perfectly composed despite the late hour. Behind him, 2 men in dark suits waited with the patient stillness of professionals. Thank God you're safe, Ryan said, stepping forward with his arms open. When the hospital called and said you'd left, I was terrified something had happened to you and the baby. For a moment, Madison almost stepped into his embrace. The pull of 3 years of conditioning, of believing this man loved her, was overwhelming. Then she saw his eyes, cold, calculating, already looking past her into the room. Who called you from the hospital, Ryan? I didn't give permission for them to release information about my whereabouts. His smile faltered for just a second. Dr. Martinez was concerned. She thought I should know. Dr. Martinez doesn't have your number. I never gave it to her. Ryan's mask began to slip. Madison, you're clearly not thinking straight. The drugs, the stress. Let me take you home where you'll be safe. Safe like I was when you were poisoning me? Poisoning you? Madison, that's insane. You're having a psychotic break. Behind the door, Amanda stepped into view, her badge and weapon both visible. FBI, Mr. Castellano, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit human trafficking, money laundering, and attempted murder. Ryan's two companions moved immediately, but Amanda was faster. Hands where I can see them. This room is surrounded. Ryan stared at Amanda, his expression cycling through disbelief, rage, and something that might have been admiration. Amber Cruz, I presume, or should I say Agent Amanda Cruz. You can call me the woman who's going to put you in prison for the rest of your life. Ryan laughed, the sound chilling in the confined space. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? The resources I have access to? The people who depend on my continued freedom? I have a very good idea. That's why you're never getting out of this room a free man. Madison watched this exchange in growing horror, seeing her husband transform before her eyes into someone she had never met. The charm was gone, replaced by cold calculation. Madison, Ryan said, turning back to her, you think you understand what's happening here, but you don't. This woman has been manipulating you, feeding you lies, destroying our marriage for her own agenda. By telling me the truth about what you've been doing to me? What truth? That I love you? That I've built an empire to provide for our family? That I've protected you from a world you couldn't handle? His voice was rising, the careful control beginning to crack. Protected me? You've been drugging me for months. I've been keeping you stable. Do you have any idea what you're like when you're not medicated? Paranoid, accusatory, impossible to live with. The words hit Madison like physical blows. Every doubt she'd ever had about herself, every moment she'd questioned her own sanity, rushed back. Amanda stepped closer to Ryan. Keep talking. You're making our case stronger with every word. Ryan's attention shifted back to the FBI agent. You think you're clever, don't you? Getting close to me, seducing me, gathering your little pieces of evidence. But what you don't understand is that everything you think you know is already compromised. Nah, Key, what do you mean? Ryan smiled, and Madison saw something in that expression that made her blood run cold. Pure evil, barely contained beneath a veneer of civilization. I mean, your investigation was blown the moment you walked into my office 8 months ago. I know who you are. I know who sent you. And I know exactly how this is going to end. Amanda's composure cracked slightly. You're lying. Am I? Then why hasn't your backup arrived? Why are your communications being jammed? Why is the surveillance footage from tonight going to show my pregnant wife having a complete breakdown and attacking a federal agent? Madison looked between them, understanding dawning. This was all planned. You knew she was FBI. I've known from day one. The question is, Agent Cruz, did your handlers know I knew? Or are you just another pawn in a game bigger than both of us? Amanda's hand tightened on her weapon, but Ryan's two companions had moved closer, boxing them in. The real tragedy, Ryan continued, his voice conversational again, is that none of this had to happen. Madison, you could have lived a beautiful life, wealthy, protected, beloved by millions of followers. All you had to do was stay quiet and trust me. Trust you to sell our baby? Ryan's laugh was genuinely amused. Sell our baby? Madison, you really have lost your mind. Why would I sell something so valuable? Children like ours with the right breeding, the right training, become assets worth millions over a lifetime. Madison felt bile rise in her throat. Assets? The entertainment industry, politics, high society marriages. Beautiful, talented, completely controlled children are incredibly valuable. I wasn't going to sell our baby, sweetheart. I was going to mold them into perfection. Amanda raised her weapon. That's enough. Is it? Because I think we're just getting started. Ryan pulled out his phone and pressed a button. Immediately, the lights in the room flickered and went out. Emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie red glow. EMP device, Ryan explained casually. Primitive, but effective. All your recording equipment, your communications, your backup plans, all fried. In the darkness, Madison heard sounds of a struggle. Amanda crying out. The thud of bodies hitting the floor. When the lights came back on, Amanda was on the ground, blood trickling from her temple. Ryan's men flanked him, weapons drawn. Now then, Ryan said, smoothing his jacket. I believe we were discussing your future, Madison. Madison looked at the woman who had risked everything to save her, now unconscious on the hotel room floor. She thought about the baby growing inside her, about the life of servitude Ryan had planned for them both. "What happens now?" she asked. Ryan's smile was triumphant. "Now you come home with me. You take your medication like a good girl. You have our beautiful baby. And you never ever try to leave me again." "And if I refuse?" Ryan gestured to Amanda's still form. "Federal agents disappear all the time. Dangerous job, lots of enemies. As for you, well, everyone already knows you're having a breakdown. Tragic what mental illness can do to a young mother." Madison closed her eyes, feeling the trap close around her completely. When she opened them again, something had changed in her expression. "You're right, Ryan. I have been having a breakdown." She moved toward him, her posture submissive, defeated. "I'm sorry I doubted you. I'm sorry I believed her lies." Ryan's smile widened as she approached. "That's my good girl." Madison reached up to touch his face, her fingers trailing along his cheek. "The only thing I don't understand," she said softly, "is why you thought I came here alone." Ryan's smile faltered. "What?" Behind him, the hotel room door exploded inward. The room filled with federal agents in tactical gear, their weapons trained on Ryan and his men. Through the shattered door, Detective Wright appeared, followed by more officers than Madison could count. "FBI, drop your weapons." Ryan's composure finally cracked completely. "This is impossible. The EMP device, the communications jamming." Amanda stirred on the floor, touching her bloodied temple. When she spoke, her voice was weak but triumphant. "Hardened equipment, you narcissistic psychopath. Did you really think we'd come after you with consumer electronics?" Wright moved to Madison's side. "You did good, Madison. The wire you wore transmitted everything." Madison touched the small device hidden beneath her maternity dress, the one Amanda had given her before Ryan arrived. "I was so scared it wouldn't work." "It worked perfectly. We have him on attempted murder, conspiracy, human trafficking, and about 6 other federal charges." Ryan was staring at Madison with something approaching awe. "You planned this. You've been planning this." Madison met his gaze steadily. "I learned from the best. You taught me that everyone in your life is either an asset or a liability. Tonight, I decided which one I was going to be." As the agents secured Ryan's men and read them their rights, Wright helped Amanda to her feet. "How long have you two been working together?" Ryan asked, his voice now hollow. "About 4 hours," Madison said. "Since she showed me what you really are." "Amanda contacted us after Madison left the hospital," Wright explained. "We've been coordinating the takedown ever since." Ryan shook his head slowly. "You have no idea what you've done. The people I work for, the organization behind all this, they don't just disappear because you arrested one man." "You're right," Amanda said, steadying herself against the wall. "That's why this isn't just about you. You're going to help us bring down the entire network." "I'll never cooperate." Amanda smiled grimly. "You already have. The financial records you kept, the communications you thought were encrypted, the contacts list in your private server. We've had access to all of it for months." Ryan's face went white. "That's impossible." "Your wife gave us access," Wright said. "Turns out, when you use your pregnant wife's thumbprint to unlock devices while she's unconscious from the drugs you've been feeding her, sometimes she notices." Madison held up her thumb. "Every time you thought I was napping, every time the medication knocked me out, I was learning about your passwords, your accounts, your business. The perfect victim you created turned out to be the perfect witness," Amanda added. As the agents led Ryan toward the door, he turned back to Madison one last time. "You think you've won? You think this is over? These people will never stop hunting you. You and that baby will never be safe." Madison placed both hands on her belly, feeling her child's strong movements. "Let them try. I'm not the helpless woman you tried to create anymore." Ryan was dragged from the room, still shouting threats and promises of revenge. After the chaos settled, Madison found herself alone with Wright and Amanda in the destroyed hotel suite. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you testify," Wright said. "Help us put these people away forever." "And after that?" Amanda sat down carefully, still dizzy from her head injury. "After that, you disappear. New identity, new life. Somewhere they can never find you." Madison looked out the window at the city lights below. Somewhere out there was the penthouse that had been her prison, the cameras that had recorded her every movement, the life that had been built on lies. I don't want to disappear, she said finally. I want to fight. Wright and Amanda exchanged glances. Madison, Wright said gently, these people are dangerous. They have resources, connections, influence. The safest thing for you and your baby is to vanish completely. The safest thing for every other woman like me is to make sure they can't do this again. Madison turned from the window, her expression resolute. I want to work with you. I want to help expose this entire network. I want to make sure no other woman wakes up one day to discover her entire life has been a lie. Amanda studied her carefully. You understand what that means? No normal life? No quiet existence? You'd be a target forever. I've been a target my entire marriage. At least this way, I'd be fighting back. Wright's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. We need to move. Media's gotten wind of the arrest. This place will be swarming with reporters in 20 minutes. As they prepared to leave, Madison took one last look around the hotel room where her old life had died and her new one had been born. Amanda, she said as they reached the door, the other wives Ryan had before me, are they really dead? Amanda hesitated. 2 of them are. The third disappeared 5 years ago. We think she might have escaped, but we've never been able to find her. Could she still be alive? It's possible. If she is, she's very good at staying hidden. Madison nodded, filing that information away. Another mission for another day. As they walked toward the elevator, Madison felt her baby kick hard against her ribs. She pressed her hand to the spot, smiling despite everything. We're going to be okay, she whispered. We're going to help make sure everyone is okay. Behind them, the destroyed hotel room stood as testament to the night everything changed. The perfect life had been revealed as a perfect lie, but from the wreckage, something real had finally emerged. The fight was just beginning. 6 weeks later, Madison sat in a federal courthouse, her hands folded over her now 8-month pregnant belly. The courtroom was packed with reporters, federal agents, and spectators drawn by the sensational nature of the case. Ryan sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his perfectly styled hair now unkempt, his confident demeanor replaced by the hollow look of a man whose empire had crumbled. He hadn't looked at Madison once since entering the courtroom. Mrs. Castellano, the prosecutor began, please tell the court about your marriage to the defendant. Madison's voice was steady as she recounted the fairy tale beginning, the gradual isolation, the systematic drugging. The courtroom was silent, except for the scratch of reporters' pens and the whir of cameras. Can you describe your physical and mental state during the months you were unknowingly consuming the substances the defendant substituted for your prenatal vitamins? I felt like I was losing my mind, Madison said. I couldn't concentrate, couldn't remember conversations, couldn't trust my own perceptions. I thought I was having some kind of pregnancy-related breakdown. That was the intended effect, wasn't it? Objection, Ryan's lawyer called out. Sustained. The prosecutor shifted tactics. Mrs. Castellano, did you ever confront your husband about his relationship with his assistant? Yes. He told me I was being paranoid, that it was pregnancy hormones making me suspicious. How did that make you feel? Madison paused, remembering those dark months when she'd questioned everything about herself. Like I couldn't trust my own mind. Like maybe I really was unstable. But you weren't unstable, were you? No, I was being systematically poisoned and psychologically manipulated. The defense attorney, an expensive suit with cold eyes, stood for cross-examination. Mrs. Castellano, isn't it true that you've struggled with anxiety and depression your entire adult life? I've had normal stress responses to difficult situations, including the stress of discovering your husband's wealth came from criminal enterprises, Madison's lawyer objected, but the question hung in the air. Mrs. Castellano, isn't it possible that your difficulties during this period stemmed from your own psychological issues rather than any intentional actions by my client? Madison met the lawyer's gaze steadily. No, that's not possible. How can you be sure? Because the night I stopped taking the pills he gave me, my mind cleared completely. Within 48 hours, I could think clearly for the first time in months. Or you were experiencing withdrawal from medications you actually needed. Madison's temper flared. Are you suggesting I needed antipsychotic medication? I'm suggesting that a woman who breaks into hotel rooms in the middle of the night to meet strangers might not be the most reliable narrator of her own story. I wasn't meeting a stranger. I was meeting an FBI agent who risked her life to save mine. The testimony continued for hours. Madison recounted the surveillance footage, the fake medical records Ryan had created, the evidence of his previous wives who had suffered similar fates. When Amanda Cruz took the stand, she painted a picture of an organization that trafficked in human beings, moving victims across international borders, destroying lives for profit. Mr. Castellano wasn't just running a business, Amanda testified. He was running a machine designed to break people down and rebuild them as products. And his relationship with Mrs. Castellano fit this pattern? Perfectly. Isolate the victim, undermine their confidence, create dependency, then maintain control through psychological and chemical means. During the lunch recess, Madison sat in a small conference room with Wright and Amanda, picking at a sandwich she couldn't taste. "How do you think it's going?" she asked. "The jury's with you?" Wright said. "They can see what he did to you. But will it be enough to convict?" Amanda nodded. "The financial evidence alone would put him away for life. Your testimony just makes it personal, helps the jury understand the human cost of what he was doing." Madison's phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Martinez. "Watching the coverage. So proud of you. Baby looks ready to make an appearance soon?" Madison smiled, her hand moving to her belly. The baby had been active all morning, responding to her elevated stress levels. "What happens after the trial?" she asked. "Witness protection, if you want it," Wright said. "New identity, new life, somewhere safe." "And if I don't want it?" Amanda and Wright exchanged the same look they'd shared in the hotel room. "Madison," Amanda said carefully, "Ryan wasn't lying when he said this organization has reach. They've already put a price on your head." "How much?" $5 million, dead or alive." Madison absorbed this information calmly. "Then it's a good thing I'm not planning to hide." The afternoon session focused on the other victims. Amanda presented evidence of the women who had come before Madison, their stories eerily similar. Young, intelligent, trusting women who had been slowly destroyed by the man they thought loved them. Photos of the missing women filled the courtroom screens. Lives cut short, families destroyed, dreams turned to nightmares. When Ryan finally took the stand in his own defense, his performance was masterful, charming, vulnerable, the picture of a man whose love had been twisted into something unrecognizable. "I love my wife," he said, looking directly at Madison for the first time. "Everything I did was to protect her, to protect our family, including drugging her without her knowledge. I was trying to help her manage her anxiety. She was spiraling, terrified of everything, unable to function. Did you have medical training that qualified you to prescribe psychiatric medication?" "I was consulting with doctors." "Which doctors?" Ryan hesitated for just a moment. "Private physicians, confidential consultations." "Physicians who have no record of treating Mrs. Castellano? Doctor-patient privilege makes it difficult to—" "Mr. Castellano, did you or did you not systematically poison your pregnant wife with psychiatric medications?" Ryan's mask slipped completely. For just a moment, Madison saw the cold rage that had always lurked beneath his charm. "I protected her from herself," he snarled. "She was going to destroy everything we built together." The courtroom erupted. Ryan's lawyer tried to control the damage, but it was too late. The jury had seen the real Ryan Castellano. As the trial concluded, Madison felt the baby shift restlessly. Soon she would bring a child into a world where people like Ryan existed. But she would also bring them into a world where people like Amanda and Wright fought to stop them. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. As Ryan was led away in shackles, he turned to Madison one final time. "This isn't over," he mouthed. Madison touched her belly and smiled. "Yes, it is." 3 months after the trial, Madison sat in a sunny nursery in a safe house outside Portland, nursing her daughter Hope. The baby had arrived 2 weeks early, as if eager to enter the world free of the shadows that had surrounded her conception. The house was modest compared to the Malibu mansion, but it felt like home in a way that palace never had. Books lined the shelves, toys scattered the floor, and the security system was designed to keep people out, not trap them inside. Amanda visited weekly, her official FBI business serving as cover for checking on Madison and Hope. Today she brought news. Ryan's been transferred to ADX Florence, she said, settling into the rocking chair beside Madison. Supermax prison, 23 hours a day in isolation. Good, Madison said simply. The organization he worked for has been decimated. We've made arrests in 12 countries, shut down dozens of operations. Madison looked down at Hope's peaceful face. But not all of them. No, not all of them. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Hope sleep. The baby was beautiful, healthy, unmarked by the violence that had surrounded her earliest months. I've been thinking about the other wife, Madison said. The one who disappeared 5 years ago. Amanda nodded. Sarah Mitchell. We're still looking for her. What if she doesn't want to be found? What if she built a new life, had children, found happiness? Then we respect that choice. Madison stood carefully, placing Hope in her crib. The baby stirred but didn't wake. I want to help find her, and I want to help other women who might be trapped in the situations like mine. Madison, you've done enough. You testified, helped us take down the network. You deserve to live quietly, raise your daughter in peace. Madison moved to the window, looking out at the garden where she planned to teach Hope to plant flowers, to trust in the soil and sun to nurture growing things. Peace isn't the absence of conflict, she said. It's the presence of justice. Amanda joined her at the window. What are you proposing? A foundation. Resources for women escaping abusive relationships, especially those involving powerful men with extensive resources. Legal aid, protection, new identities when necessary. That would make you a target again. I'm already a target. At least this way, I'd be fighting back. Amanda was quiet for a long moment. There's something I haven't told you about Ryan. Madison turned to face her. He's been receiving visitors in prison, high-powered lawyers, people we can't identify. They're planning something. An appeal? Maybe. Or maybe something else. Madison felt a familiar chill, but it was different now. Not the helpless fear of a trapped woman, but the alert caution of someone prepared to fight. What do you recommend? Disappear. Take Hope and vanish completely. Let us handle whatever Ryan is planning. Madison looked back at the crib where her daughter slept peacefully. Hope would grow up in a world where predators like Ryan existed, but she would also grow up knowing that people fought back. No, Madison said firmly. I'm done hiding. That evening, Madison sat at her laptop, drafting the first blog post for what would become the Hope Foundation. Her words were careful, measured, designed to reach women who might be living in beautiful cages of their own. If you're reading this and wondering whether your perfect life might be a perfect lie, trust your instincts. If you feel like you're losing your mind, consider the possibility that someone wants you to feel that way. If you've stopped checking the exits, it might be time to find them again. The post went live at midnight, shared across social media platforms by supporters who had followed her story. Within hours, it had been read by millions. The responses came immediately. Women sharing their own stories of isolation, manipulation, and abuse. Some trapped in marriages to powerful men, others who had escaped and wanted to help. Madison read each message, her heart breaking and healing simultaneously. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. Hope stirred in her crib, making the soft sounds that meant she was waking up hungry. Madison lifted her daughter, settling into the rocking chair Amanda had left behind. We're going to change the world, little one, she whispered as Hope latched on to nurse, one truth at a time. Outside, rain began to fall, washing the windows clean. In the distance, thunder rumbled, but it sounded different now. Not threatening, but promising. A storm was coming, but this time Madison would be the one bringing it. She thought about Ryan in his isolation cell, about the organization still operating in shadows around the world, about all the women who might be sitting in golden cages, wondering if they were going crazy. The fight was far from over, but for the first time in her life, Madison was exactly where she belonged. 1 year later, Madison stood before a packed auditorium at the University of Southern California, Hope babbling contentedly in her arms. The Hope Foundation had grown beyond anything she had imagined, with chapters in 40 states and a waiting list of volunteers. When I started this foundation, Madison told the audience, I thought I was helping other women avoid what happened to me. What I learned is that I was helping myself heal. In the front row sat Detective Wright, now the Foundation's head of security. Beside him, Amanda Cruz, who had taken a leave of absence from the FBI to serve as Director of Investigations. The most important thing I want to share with you today isn't about recognizing the signs of manipulation or abuse, though those are crucial. It's about remembering that your voice matters, your instincts matter, your life matters. Madison had testified before Congress, consulted with law enforcement agencies, and helped pass legislation strengthening protections for domestic abuse victims. But the work that mattered most happened in quiet moments, in phone calls with women who were taking their first steps toward freedom. "Sarah Mitchell," Madison said, and the auditorium fell silent. "Some of you may recognize that name from news coverage of my case. Sarah was one of my husband's previous wives, one of the women we thought was dead." Madison smiled as the side door opened, and a woman walked out. Tall, dark-haired, with eyes that had seen too much but still held hope. Sarah reached out to the Foundation 6 months ago. She had been living under an assumed identity in rural Montana, working as a veterinarian, convinced that speaking out would endanger the children she was protecting. Sarah took the microphone with steady hands. "I spent 5 years believing I was dead to the world. Madison and the Hope Foundation showed me that the world needed to hear from the living." The audience erupted in applause. Sarah's testimony had helped authorities uncover 3 more trafficking operations and rescue dozens of victims. After the event, Madison and Sarah sat in a quiet coffee shop near campus, watching Hope play with blocks on the floor between them. "Any word from Ryan's lawyers?" Sarah asked. Madison nodded grimly. "Another appeal filed last week. He's claiming prosecutorial misconduct, ineffective counsel, the usual desperate moves. Worried? Not about the appeal, but Amanda thinks he's using the legal process to communicate with people on the outside." Sarah's expression darkened. "The organization? What's left of it? They've been regrouping, adapting, harder to track now that they know how we found them before." Hope crawled over to Sarah, pulling herself up on the woman's leg with a bright smile. Sarah lifted the toddler onto her lap, marveling at the child's fearless joy. "She doesn't know how close she came to a very different life," Sarah said. "She'll know when she's old enough to understand, but she'll also know that people fought for her, that justice is possible." Madison's phone buzzed with a text from Wright. "Priority alert. Need you back at the office immediately." Sarah saw Madison's expression change. "Go. I'll watch Hope." Madison hesitated. Leaving Hope still triggered anxiety, a leftover from the months when she couldn't trust anyone. "She'll be safe with me," Sarah said firmly. "We'll be at the Foundation office in an hour." The Hope Foundation operated out of a converted warehouse in downtown Los Angeles, its open floor plan bustling with caseworkers, legal advocates, and volunteers. Madison found Wright and Amanda huddled around a computer screen, their faces grim. "What is it?" Madison asked. Wright turned the screen toward her. Security footage from ADX Florence showed Ryan in an isolation cell, but he wasn't alone. A guard stood nearby, clearly in conversation with the prisoner. "This guard doesn't exist in the prison's personnel files," Amanda explained. "No background check, no employment record. He appeared on the roster 3 weeks ago and vanished yesterday." "Someone got a fake guard into a supermax prison?" "Someone with serious resources and connections," Wright confirmed. "Ryan had a visitor, and we have no idea who or what was discussed." Madison studied Ryan's face in the footage. Even in an orange jumpsuit, even in isolation, he radiated the same cold confidence she remembered. "He's planning something, or someone's planning something for him," Amanda said. "Madison, I need to ask, have you noticed anything unusual lately? Anyone following you? Strange phone calls, online threats beyond the usual?" Madison considered. "Actually, yes. Someone's been calling the Foundation, asking specific questions about our security protocols, claims to be a documentary filmmaker." Wright and Amanda exchanged looks. "Did you get a name?" "Victoria Sterling. Said she was working on a film about domestic abuse survivors." Amanda's face went white. "Madison, Victoria Sterling is dead, has been for 3 years." The room seemed to tilt. Madison gripped the desk for support. "Who did I talk to?" "I don't know, but whoever it was has been probing our defenses." Wright was already on his phone, calling for increased security. Madison thought about Hope. safe with Sarah at the coffee shop, and felt the familiar ice of fear in her veins. They're coming for us. We don't know that yet, Amanda said, but her hand was already moving to her weapon. Madison's phone rang. Sarah's number. Madison, thank God. Someone just tried to grab Hope. Mall security intervened, but you need to get here now. The line went dead. Madison was already running for the door when Wright caught her arm. Madison, wait. This could be a trap to separate you from security. Then it's working, because I'm going to my daughter. Amanda stepped between Madison and the exit. We go together. Full protection detail. As they prepared to leave, Madison caught sight of herself in the reflective surface of the office windows. 1 year ago, she had been a broken woman convinced she was losing her mind. Now she was a target with resources, allies, and the absolute certainty that she would protect her child at any cost. Ryan's network was making its move. But Madison Brooks Castellano wasn't the same frightened woman they had once controlled. The final battle was about to begin, and this time, she was ready. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, and Madison knew that whatever happened next would determine not just her future and hopes, but the fate of every woman the Foundation was working to save. The war for justice was far from over, but today they would win another battle. As they raced through the Los Angeles streets toward her daughter, Madison felt something she hadn't experienced in years. The absolute certainty that she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do, fighting back. Madison's fight didn't end with Ryan's conviction. It began there. Today, the Hope Foundation has saved hundreds of lives and changed how law enforcement handles these cases. But stories like Madison's are still happening right now in mansions and penthouses around the world. If this story moved you, if it opened your eyes to the reality that domestic abuse doesn't discriminate based on wealth or status, then please, hit that like button to help us reach more people who need to hear this truth. Share this video with someone who might be living their own version of Madison's nightmare. Your share could literally save a life. And if you want to hear more stories of survival, justice, and the incredible strength of the human spirit, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell. We're building a community of people who refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice. Drop a comment below. Have you ever felt like something was too good to be true in your own life? Sometimes our instincts are trying to save us. Madison's story proves that it's never too late to check the exits. Remember, if you or someone you know needs help, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7. You don't have to face this alone. Until next time, keep fighting, keep believing, and never stop checking the exits.